A retail and leisure company, Marka, was declared bankrupt by a local court and all of its assets brought into liquidation. The Dubai Court of First Instance issuing the potentially groundbreaking judgment in respect of directors' liability in the context of corporate insolvency. Yeah, I appreciate there's a lot of legal jargon here, but it is a finding, and it is a case that all UAE business owners and managers should be aware of, given the impact it could have. To explain this and cut through that legal jargon, we've got the managing partner of BSA, Ahmed bin Hazim and Associates, Jimmy Haoula, who joins us live on the line, and also happy to say live via Microsoft Teams this morning. Good morning to you, Jimmy.
Good morning, Tom.
So, why a landmark? Actually, let's take a step back if we can, first and foremost. Let's have a bit of context on this one. Who are Marka and what did they do wrong, Jimmy?
Marka is a listed company, raised capital of around $1 billion in order to expand into lifestyle and hospitality. They've spent more than they've made and as such went under.
They went under, hence the court step in. The Dubai Court of First Instance come in with this judgment. And the judgment is, according to all of those that are reading the headlines at the moment, a landmark judgment. Why is it a landmark, and why should we all sit up and take notice?
It's the first judgment of its nature in relation to bankruptcies and the imposition of liability on the directors of the companies. As everybody is well aware, the bankruptcy laws is quite recent in the United Arab Emirates, and it has provided for the directors' liabilities in certain circumstances where the company has not declared itself incapable of fulfilling its liabilities once it reaches a certain level of capital or liability. And as such, this judgment comes in and says, directors, managers, please beware because you will be held liable. I think it's a great legislation, and I think what the exercise that's done has demonstrated that when we issue laws, we ask people to follow them.
So up until this point, Jimmy, was it the case pretty much across the board that there was not that personal statutory liability, or statutory personal liability, I should say, from management and directors in companies?
The general liability has always been there. I think what this piece of legislation has done has made it very clear that they will be held liable in specific certain circumstances that may have not been very clear earlier in previous legislation, such as the UAE Civil Code and the Commercial Transactions Code and the Companies Law.
And in terms of that liability, liable for the full amount that is owing or just a percentage of?
The liability is restricted to those who have caused the liability. That must be made very clear. I know that the judgment as circulated in different forms around the city indicates that everyone's liable and so on and so forth. People need to be scared. People need not be scared. Directors need not be scared. Directors who have done errors in their judgments intentionally and have caused the liability on the company, then those are the directors that should be concerned and scared. And is it for the full liability? Yes, it could be for the full liability if these directors have failed to act appropriately and have failed to report the necessary incidents and losses to the General Assembly of the companies and the relevant regulator.
In terms of the judicial precedent it sets at the moment, and you said that you think it is a great move from the Dubai courts. Why is this a good move? And is this yet more evidence, Jimmy, of the transparency and the evolution of laws here at the moment?
Naturally, legislation is made to support people. It's not made to harm people. This piece of legislation is there to support both the shareholders of listed companies and private companies and the creditors of such companies who went out and lent these companies monies and businesses and assets. Definitely, it provides for transparency in the market, and moreover, again, it indicates that we will hold those liable for what errors they have done. This judgment is not in its final form as far as the directors is concerned. This judgment, in my opinion, is in final form as far as the declaration of bankruptcy is concerned. But the directors have other means to look into this matter, provided they have done nothing wrong.
With regards to this specific case, have we heard the last of this, or will there be an appeal?
I believe in relation to the aspect of bankruptcy, this is the last of it. And in relation to the director's liability, I'm confident that those directors who feel they have been prejudiced by the order will appeal and should appeal because, again, the law made it very clear. Those who have caused the liability will be held responsible. Those who have not will not.
And in terms of what we can take from this judgment at the moment, I mean, what's your advice to other business owners, other directors, other managers listening in to this conversation at the moment? How is this judgment, or could this judgment potentially affect them, and what do they need to put in place to avoid it?
Corporate governance is really the key to all. Again, there's a lot of talk about how this order or judgment has hurt the business industries and the integrity of directors and managers. That's incorrect. Managers need to put corporate governance in place, need to comply with it, and need to provide transparency, both to the regulator and to the shareholders. There is nothing wrong in performing your duties as a director or a manager of a company. And if it goes under, it goes under for the market reasons, but not for intentional human error.
And is there a need here, Jimmy, just finally, for balance? Yeah, it seems like the courts obviously won this one on the occasion, but do we need to ensure that there is a balance and there's not too much of a swerve towards punitive judgments on companies like this? Do we need to still have that sort of liberty to perform our business?
The answer is yes. However, again, I'd like to emphasize the nature of this judgment is not punitive per se, except to those who have caused the liability.
Yeah.
And yes, in my opinion, those who have caused the liability intentionally should be held responsible for their actions. This is other people's money. This is other creditors' assets and monies. You can't play around with that, just go unnoticed.
Jimmy, you've done exactly what we've asked you to do, which is explain it to us in layman's terms. So really appreciate you cutting through the language there. The finding can be difficult for a number of people, but you've made it very, very understandable to others. So, Jimmy, really appreciate your time this morning. A big thanks to Jimmy for joining us live on the line to explain it in more details. Jimmy Haoula is the managing partner of BSA Ahmed bin Hazim and Associates LLP, talking to us there about the Marka Bankruptcy findings.
You've been listening to a Dubai Eye 103.8 podcast. To enjoy lots more